webinar is about growth coaching, and we're going to dive into we're putting two things together, the idea of growth, or talking about growth mindset, kind of diving into that. And actually growth mindset was something last year that a lot of people who were in the program said they would really like to at least touch on the topic, maybe learn a little bit more about it. So we're going to touch on growth mindset today, but we're also going to go into how that applies to being not just a mentor, but a coach for your new teachers, or even those of you who are administrators, for your administrative staff. So moving ahead, this is our agenda. We are going to, like I said, we're going to cover growth mindset first. Then we're going to go into teacher coaching, and then at the end we'll give an update as far as CTE Teach. We'll share some of the numbers with you of hours and stuff. Grant has all that for you, and then lastly we'll tell you about some upcoming webinars that we have available for you, and more resources and whatnot. So we have a lot of people coming in, and if you would like to join us on the presentation, you can do so if you go to the bit.ly at the bottom, and then it's bit.ly/CTE webinar number 2. And so I want to have my team introduce themselves. And to start, I think I know most of you by now. I'm Christopher McClung, the Southern California Program Coordinator. I'm in Melissa Dix, who's not on with us today, but she's actually our program administrator. She oversees everything that we are doing for CTE Teach. But the rest of my team is here, and I'll go ahead and let you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves, and we'll start with you, Grant.
Well, hello, everybody. It's good to have you all here. Good to see familiar faces. My name is Grant Irvis, and I am the Northern California Program Coordinator for CTE Teach, on top of the other hats that I wear as the Director of the California Agricultural Teachers Induction Program and Director of CTE Credentialing through the Yolo Solano Center.
Very cool. David.
Good morning, all. David Allman, teacher on assignment, community recruiter for the Colton Redlands Yucaipa ROP.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Quiggle, or Kathy Quiggle. I'm the program support specialist for Ed Services, and I assist with Chris and Grant with the CTE Teach program.
Fantastic. Well, glad you guys are all here. And so just so our typical webinar norms that we go over, make sure your microphone is muted. That way we don't accidentally hear things that are going on in the back room, in the background, including dogs that are crying and kids that are barking. And then also Kathy and David are in the chat room. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in chat. And then they will, if they can answer your question right then and there in the chat, they certainly will. And if not, we will hold those questions towards the end and then be able to answer those questions. And then I'll turn it over to Grant for what the admin spotlight is.
So one of the things we're going to do today is take the administrators in the room into a separate space. So that way we can look at what growth coaching looks like specifically to your role. So if you would change your name in the Zoom platform, you can do this in one of two ways. You can either hover over your name in the participants list, select more, and rename yourself that way, or you can do it by hovering over your image on the Zoom screen. And what we'd like you to do is just add admin to the beginning of your name. You can do admin hyphen and then your name, but this is going to allow us to put you into the appropriate breakout room. And so we want to make sure that we give you a contextualized version of this growth coaching. And so we'll spend some time as an admin group, while Chris is going to spend some time with our mentors today going through the context specific to mentoring. So if you have issues changing your name, let us know, but go ahead and make that change, and we'll get into the breakout rooms after a little while.
Fantastic. So, and then also I want to remind everyone, we are recording this right now, and the reason for that is we like to share all of the resources, everything we do for CTE Teach, and of course they're free resources for anyone who wants to see them. And so to do that, well, obviously we're recording. Then lastly, for one of our segments, we're going to go over some scripting, and therefore you might be easier for you if you have like a piece of paper or something to write with. It's this old-fashioned thing that they used to do where they cut down a tree and shape it into this flat little thing that you can actually write something on. So it's called paper. It's been a while since we've seen it, but if you have one near you, feel free to grab one. My kids wouldn't know what paper is, but yeah, so we're going to use that. So going on, Grant, this is all yours.
All right. So I'm sure we've all heard in some fashion what a growth mindset is. And so to give us a little primer as to where our audience is, take a moment to think about what you know. After you've kind of distilled that in 2 to 3 words, no more than a sentence, we'll leave it there. In the chat, throw down what you know about growth mindset. It can be anything. Keep it brief. I'll give you about 30 seconds to throw what you know into the chat, and then we're gonna talk about what this looks like today. So it seems like we've got a pretty good grasp on this. Now, what we're gonna do a little bit today is dive a little deeper, because there are some things in the chat that I don't know if I have seen yet, looking at things like process, right? If you know the name of the originator of this idea, her name is Carol Dweck. And she's a researcher that has coined a lot of this, and not just coined it, but done a ton of research relative to student learning on how growth mindset is built. We'll look at some of that here in a minute, but I do want to pull back and I want to pull back and focus on one little thing that Sheila mentioned, and that's the power of yet. We'll get into that in just a minute, but that's a pretty good concept that Carol talks about. And so from those things that you know, we're now going to take and shift that into your specific role, either as a mentor or as an administrator. What does it look like to facilitate a growth mindset and facilitate a change, if necessary, from fixed to growth? So thank you for some of that input. We're going to come back to that in our separate groups throughout the day today. But now we'll transition into the next slide that's got a video we want to show you. So we'll take about 10 minutes for this. During the time of the video, we want you to do a couple of things. One is to pick out the highlight that fits your LEA at this moment in time. So if you want to write that down, if you want to document it in the chat, however you want to do that, if you want to just keep it in your mind, pick out one of the highlights in the video that fits your LEA at this point in time. And so we'll focus on that, debrief a little bit at the end, and then move on with some of Carol Dweck's lessons in mind. So Chris, go ahead and play the video.
In my work, we find that some students have a fixed mindset about their intellectual abilities and talents. They think intelligence is just a fixed trait. You have a certain amount, and that's that. This is the mindset that makes kids afraid to try, because they're afraid to look dumb. But other students have a growth mindset. They believe that intelligence can be developed through their effort, dedication, learning, and mentorship from others. They don't think everyone's the same or that anyone can be Einstein, but they understand that even Einstein wasn't the guy he became before he put in years and years of dedicated labor. I'm going to organize this by telling you about a study we did with hundreds of students making the transition to 7th grade. They're about 13 years old. It's an extremely difficult transition. The work gets substantially harder, the grading gets more stringent, the environment becomes less personal. And that's a crucial time. It's a time when many students turn off to school. So as they entered, we measured their mindsets. That is, we saw whether they believed intelligence was fixed or could be developed. We monitored their grades in math over the next 2 years. We also measured a lot about their attitudes toward learning. They had entered 7th grade with just about identical achievement test scores, but by the end of the first term, their grades jumped apart and continued to diverge over the next 2 years. The only thing that differed were their mindsets. Now, let's see why and how this happened. The first thing we found was that they had completely different goals in school. The number one goal for kids in a fixed mindset is look smart at all times and at all costs. So their whole lives are oriented toward avoiding tasks that might show a deficiency. But in a growth mindset, where they believe intelligence can be developed, their cardinal rule is learn at all times and at all costs. That brings us to the second mindset rule. In a fixed mindset, effort is a bad thing. They believe if you have ability, you shouldn't need effort. And if you need a lot of effort, it's a sign that you don't have ability. I believe that belief, that if you have ability, you shouldn't need effort, is one of the worst beliefs that anyone can have. I think it's why so many of our promising students don't fulfill their potential. They go along, coasting along, not trying that hard. The other kids have to try. One day they have to try too, and they can't do it. Whereas students in a growth mindset say effort is what activates their ability. And rule number 3, in a fixed mindset, a setback or deficiency measures you and reveals your limitations. So what we find is that those students in a fixed mindset try to hide their mistakes or run from their mistakes, conceal their deficiencies. But those in a growth mindset think mistakes, setbacks, natural part of learning. It's what happens when you take on challenges. So a fixed mindset gives no way for students to handle difficulty. They may get discouraged, give up, flee, or become defensive, acting bored. Often this statement, it's boring, it's a cover for a fixed mindset. It means I'm afraid to try, or acting out, blaming the teacher or material. How are these mindsets transmitted? We've studied this in a number of ways, but maybe the most interesting way is through praise. For 15 years, we have studied how adults' praise affects students. We undertook this work at the height of the self-esteem movement, when the gurus were telling us all to praise our children's ability, tell them how brilliant and talented they are. But for 15 years, we have found praising children's intelligence harms them. It puts them into a fixed mindset and turns them off to challenging learning. Let me tell you about a series of studies we did with 10 and 11-year-olds. We brought them to a room in their school. We gave them 10 problems from this nonverbal IQ test initially. They did pretty well because they were matched to their age level, and each child received one form of praise. A third of them got intelligence praise. Wow, that's a really good score. You must be smart at this. Or process praise. That's about the process they engaged in. Could be their strategy, their effort, their focus, their persistence. Wow, that's a really good score. You must have tried really hard. And the control group. Wow, that's a really good score. I won't talk much about them because they tended to be in the middle. Now, if you listen carefully to the messages that are embodied in each statement, the first one says, I value intelligence. The second says, I value process. Let's see what happened. First, yes, indeed, praising intelligence put kids into a fixed mindset compared to praising the process. But the most astonishing thing to us was that praising intelligence turned kids off to learning. Because after we praised them, we said, what do you want to do now? Anything's fine with us. You want a hard task you can learn from, but you might make mistakes? Or do you want a task that's like something you're already good at? The majority of kids who were praised for their intelligence rejected the chance to learn in favor of something they were sure to do well on. But those praised for the process overwhelmingly wanted the hard task they could learn from. They didn't feel they were in jeopardy if they struggled for a while. Later, we gave everyone a difficult set of problems. And here we found that those who were praised for intelligence lost their confidence, didn't enjoy the problems anymore, and even when we went back to the easier problems, their performance suffered. Those who were praised for the process remained confident. They saw these problems were harder. Many of them said the hard ones were their favorites, and when we went back to the easier ones, their performance flourished because they remained engaged and they remained learning. A few months ago, we published a study showing that mothers' praise to their babies 1 to 3 years of age predicted that child's mindset and desire for challenge 5 years later. So now I feel justified when I intervene with mothers at airports who are telling their babies that they're geniuses. I have the data. So remember, praise process. But it's even more than that. It's convey to children a new value system, not about quick, easy, smart things, but like this. Sit around the dinner table and say, who had a fabulous struggle today? And each person shares the struggle. Or if a child does something quickly and easily, instead of rushing to tell them how good they are at it, we should say, oh, I'm sorry I wasted your time. Let's do something hard. Let's do something you can learn from. Recently, I have fallen in love with a new word, yet. I heard of a high school in Chicago where when they didn't master a unit, instead of a failing grade, they got the grade not yet. And I thought, isn't that great? Because not yet means, hey, you're on that learning curve, you're somewhere. And so if a child says, I'm not good at maths yet, it's like, get back on that learning curve. I can't do it yet. I tried, but it didn't work yet. The more research shows us that human abilities are capable of growth, the more it becomes a basic human right for students to experience that growth, to live in environments in which all students can fulfill their potential.
Now, if you're like Chris, I know you loved this video for the multiple different classic movie references, from Harry Potter to The Breakfast Club to even Star Wars. So there's some cool things in there just to keep your mind busy, right? If you're a visual learner like a lot of us are. But if we step back and look at the message, a lot of what you already know was in there. Right? So ask yourself the question, why do we spend 10 minutes in a professional development webinar just showing you the video? Well, one, it's a reminder, because having that reminder in front of us on a regular basis is important, whether we've seen it before or not. And it helps us refocus our efforts for today on what the true important message is. And so as we think about moving forward through today, we pull at things like Sheila mentioned earlier, and that's the power of yet. And we focus a little bit more heavily on things that y'all have put in the chat, like the project-based learning and UDL, MTSS, if you want to go as far as that. But just looking at the process by which learning takes place, right? So I'm going to be quiet for a hot minute. Are there any other takeaways that we wrote down that anybody from the group can share with us that are relevant to your LEA at this moment in time?
Are we sharing in the chat box, or just can we share verbally as well?
However you would like, Sheila. Thanks for being bold.
Sorry. Our district did an initiative a few years back with growth mindset. So it was included in our curriculum, and it really changed the way that we were praising the students. Because before that, I'll admit, I was always like, great job, you're so smart, you know, way to go. And then watching all these videos, I learned so much on just the power of yet. And that helps me, because I realized that in a lot of areas, I myself had a fixed mindset, and I felt like, oh, I just don't have the natural ability to do that. So therefore, you know, I'm going to try something else that I know that I can do well. So just trying to relate that to our students. And Class Dojo, I did a lot of elementary. They have a whole series of growth mindset videos for the kids. and they really enjoy watching them. And also the video where they show the brain connections. Have you seen that one? Where it shows your brain actually making connections when you make a mistake, and how the power of making that mistake makes your mind remember more. It was pretty interesting, just the brain science of it.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that. And brain science aside, because I could dive into that as a geek, it's one of those things my students used to tell me all the time, that they felt like I never praised them, when in fact it was more slight praise with more constructive, where can we go next, right? And so I was always challenging them. And that was one of the big things. They almost strived for getting that praise, which didn't happen very often. So in that becomes the growth, right? And that's different at a high school setting versus at an elementary setting. But in CTE, how do we do that, right? What else does it look like? Any other? Sure. All right.
Wait, can I comment about what you just said about CTE?
Yeah.
So I think with CTE, because they're learning things that it's always a not yet process. You know, you don't go into the machine shop ready to, you know, build things. It's always not yet, not yet. But I think with CTE, they have that not yet mentality set in already, because they know that they're learning all these little bits and pieces to get to the big prize at the end. So the not yet is heavy in the CTE.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you. Maria?
I think especially for CTE, I think it's vital to interweave the growth mindset in every part of it. We're preparing them for college and career. So I think it's important that they understand they're not always going to be successful, and how important it is to have that open mindset from the very beginning through their whole life. I think it's vital. I think it's part of what we should do as CTE.
Mm-hmm. That's good. Well, we're going to talk about this stuff a lot more throughout the course of today, but in the light of even shifting our own mindset for what we're doing today and how we're engaging with CTE Teach, on the next slide is a list of 30 things that we have put together as 30 different things you could potentially do today. Something that's a little bit different. Take a read through these, and I'm going to sit on your shoulder and tell you that we've got a lot changing in context in CTE these days. What of these are doable? Can we implement any of these in our programs? So I want to highlight just really briefly number 12, handwrite a letter and mail it to somebody. I've heard of CTE programs going through 8th grade recruitment where they're sending them postcards because they can't get together with the students. That's innovative, a new way to touch base. They're growing their programs model and connecting with people in different ways. And you can look at things like be a tourist in your own city. Right? We sit at our computers so often these days. How often do we get out, just go for a walk around the block? Chris was talking to us a little bit earlier and was mentioning that he got out and focused specifically on saying hi to people. Number 19, waving hello to 5 random individuals, right? And sometimes in California, people have that mindset where I'm not going to look up, I'm not going to engage because I got my own thing going on. But can you shift what they're doing? Can you impact their path just a little bit? So these 30 things, you'll have access to the slides at some point today if you don't already, and we'll share these with you. So consider how you might do something different. If you are a pen and paper kind of individual, print the slide out, slap it up right next to your computer and see if you can engage in one of these strategies today or this week, whatever works, right? So with that, keep these things in mind. I'm going to hand it over to Chris, and he's going to roll through some other information for you before we get into our breakout groups.
Yeah, good stuff. Yes, I tried number 19 on the way here. I tried saying hi to 5 people. I could not make eye contact with all 5 people. They just would not look at me. 2 of them I did. I turned to somebody and I just waved like that, and they smiled, and wave like that back. The other person, I said, hi, how's it going? And they just did a, kind of look, because we're just not used to doing that. So, but we want to put your growth mindset to practice. And so what we have for you, I'll just go to this one here, is we have 3 questions. And what you're going to do is go to menti.com, and I'm going to ask David or Kathy to put this in chat, menti.com, and type in the code 69, 83, 19, and 8. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through 3 statements, and I wanted to see how you could respond to somebody who says this to you, or what they could have said differently. Just how would you respond to this type of fixed statement, essentially what it is. So the very first statement I have up on the screen for us is, let's say you are in the staff lounge or talking to a teacher, and that teacher says, actually, let me go back, wrong one, there you go. The teacher says, some kids just don't get math, and Chris is one of them. I think we should have an easier class for him because he's never going to college. How would you respond, or how do you think that person could have said that differently? So go ahead and type in your answer, and then we'll see them pop up on the screen here. There we go. And anything that stands out, instruction. And Grant, feel free to chime in your thoughts as well.
Yeah, this looks good. We know Chris hasn't gotten it yet. He struggled, but he'll get there.
And honestly, this is probably a true story. Terrible at math so far. Still working on it. Love these. What are some barriers that might be preventing Chris from understanding the content? Can we love that? Can we ask other teachers in the department how they teach that lesson concept? Love that. Like maybe it's not even that he's getting the math, maybe it's just he's not understanding through the way the lesson's being taught. I think we should I agree if we should eliminate math completely. Yes. Let's see how we can make the math more applicable to real life. And I love that as well. Like for some students, and I was one of them, maybe that math lesson needs to connect to their real life. You know, if you're telling me how much gas I need to, how much gas am I going to spend from California to Texas, and I'm like 8 years old and don't drive, it's not relevant to me. But if you're going to tell me, you know, how many video games can I buy with $60, then it's like, oh, well, I want to talk about that. Fantastic. All right, let's move to the next statement. So, talking to a parent says to you, I know Grant is struggling with grammar. He's just never been good at it, and I've never been good at it either. Once again, how would you respond, or how could this parent have thought differently using a more of a growth mindset type ideology?
Yeah, and where's the focus here?
And hopefully you guys would have saw the slides change on your end, correct? Okay, good, perfect. What areas does Grant excel? How can we use those areas in supporting his growth? Absolutely.
Whoever made that first comment, they should have been a part of my PhD program.
There you go. We will work with Grant to help him get better at it. Absolutely. Learning together can help Grant thrive. Yes.
Wow. I feel built up. Thank you.
And there's the yet statement. Love it. He's just not good at it yet. Practice makes perfect. Yet you responded with proper grammar. There we go.
That's good.
If everyone was good at it, I wouldn't have a job. Very good. So looking at why he's not good, let's look at what he is good at. Very good. Time for change. Awesome. Okay, last one I'm going to show, and this is a statement we've never heard before in education, especially this year. And teacher says to you, I prefer not to use very much technology in my teaching. I'm not really good at it. My old methods work just fine. How could that person respond differently? Or what would you say to that teacher who's just telling you, I'm not interested in technology. I don't need to learn it. Don't need to use it.
This is a good one. I'm curious about this one.
Yeah. So as you're typing this, I will share with you my son's second grade teacher last year actually said this during her parent teacher conference because she was asked, do you use Class Dojo? And she said, you know what? I'm just not good at technology. I've been teaching for 35 years. I don't need to learn any new stuff. And then the pandemic happened after that open house, and she was forced to have to learn technology. And so I think a lot of us have a different perspective of it, for sure. Fred Flintstone called, left a message for you. He helps to see you at the class reunion. Love that. Start small. Fantastic. I agree. And I think, unfortunately, that's a lot of what's happened this year is we're so inundated with so much technology. It's like, where do I even begin? Like, please help me find out, where do I need to start with?
Yeah. You know, I heard some really cool stories about this as some other answers are coming in, where different LEAs would do like a summer boot camp or a series of tech that would fit into their PD they're normally supposed to do through their collective bargaining agreements and stuff. And it was really neat how many people would show up. And the interesting thing that everything distilled into is time. It just takes somebody taking the time to help those individuals see where they start. That's kind of cool.
That is cool. So I'm going to brag on my wife a little bit, Wendy McClung, who's going to do a webinar for us next month. But she is one of our technology lead teachers here. And she's got the certifications and Google stuff and all sorts of stuff under her belt. What she's really good at is not dumping new technology on teachers. She's really good at meeting with teachers, asking them what is it that they want to do, and then help them figure out what technology that they can use to figure that out, whether that be easier grading, more student engagement. She does an excellent job at asking first, what is it that you're wanting to do? And then figuring out what technology accompanies that goal. Very cool. All right, so before we move on to the next question, this is where Kathy is going to now move our administrators into a separate breakout room, and Grant's going to go over some stuff with them, kind of talk about a little bit of reports and whatnot. And I don't want to spoil what you've got planned for them, but he's got a separate workshop for them. And then we are going to continue with the mentors in this room. We're going to start progressing towards how we can take this idea of a growth mindset and implement it in how we coach our teachers. So Kathy, go ahead and if you can start sending out those breakout room invitations before we move on to the very next question. All right. You good? There we go. All right. So if you're an administrator, you should have gotten an invitation to join that breakout room. There we go. There we go. Awesome. So now we should have mostly mentors in here. And so we will continue on. And I think Kathy, Robert can go into a breakout room as well. Robert LeBlanc. Glad you're here, Robert, joining us from Tri-Cities. She's still working on it. There we go. All right. So for the next 20 minutes, we're going to do a Padlet called What You Don't Like About Your Boss. Is that all right? Totally kidding. All right. So, the next question I want to ask you, we're continuing the Mentimeter, is in your opinion, which image do you think best illustrates your role as a teacher coach? Is it the coach bag? Would it be a traditional sports coach, or would it be a stage coach? Okay, got 2 for the sports coach, 4 for the sports coach, 5 for the sports coach. Maybe a couple more. 1 for the coach bag. There we go. Hi, Grant. Welcome back.
Hi there.
How's it going?
Because nobody was in my room.
Oh, did they leave?
I put the admins in room 1.
Let's see.
There's a couple that did not join.
They just left.
So it shows that I've been assigned to room 2.
Chris, I thought Grant wanted us to change all of our, put admin in front of all our names. So I put admin in front of my name, but I'm just a mentor. I'm not admin. So I think I jumped the gun on that. So I left and I'm back with you.
Okay.
Now.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Now you get the basket of nails. Here I am.
That's okay. So Grant, they are in, you're not here anymore. All right. So Patrick, you're not a mentor yet.
Yet.
All right. So it looks like they're all in room 1. And applause to Kathy. This is actually Kathy's, speaking of growth learning, this is Kathy's very first time doing breakout rooms. And because we want to try something different. All right. So continuing on. So we have 9 of the sports coach, 1 of the stage coach, and 2 for the coach bag. And so, yes, a lot of us tend to think that when we are working as mentors, we are thinking of ourselves as some sort of sports coach. You know, we're giving them the game plan, we're giving them the encouragement, we're helping them get to that goal line. But what I want to do is I want to kind of shift our mentality right now. And we're going to look at, let me get out of here and continue in that Menti, because we will use it again later. But I want you to think about yourselves as that stage coach. And so right now we're shifting our mentality from being a mentor to now being a coach. And the way the stage coach comes into play is you have a teacher and you have a teacher's goal of what they want to do, whether that be student engagement, classroom management, they want to do more rigorous teaching. Think of yourselves as that teacher coach, and you're helping that teacher get from point A to point B in their goals. And so I have on the sidebar here, I have Chris's sidebar. And one of the things we're going to look at is we're going to look at how we can improve teaching for career technical education. And part of it is going through this coaching process. And so, and I say all that to say, I was looking for a video of just a CTE teacher teaching, like whether it be a 30-minute video, something about just finding a teacher, seeing how they start their class, how they do their lesson, how they end it. I could not find anything for CTE of CTE teachers just teaching. We have tons of videos about program highlights, what students are doing, little commercials of what teachers are doing, but I couldn't find anything about just a CTE teacher teaching or improving their craft as the teacher. And so this is kind of where our focus is going to be for the remainder of the training, is this idea of you're not being a mentor. Think of a mentor as somebody who's encouraging, showing them how to become a better teacher. Think of yourselves more as that coach now. You're the person getting your teacher from point A to point B. You are the stage coach who's helping travel them there. So for our next slide, what we're going to do is I wanted to share with you a video of kind of what this looks like, of what I'm sharing. And this is how principals are coaching their teachers. And I'll go ahead and let you watch that now.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Early College is a 6th through 12th grade school. And right now we have 1,280 students. 7 years ago, we had 1,041 students. So I attribute our increased student population to strong teachers, systems, and structure, and that we're providing our teachers the tools that they need to ensure that our students are successful. One thing that I find unique about Denver Public Schools is the investment in growing teachers into leaders. As a principal in Wichita, Kansas, we didn't have a system for observations. And I can recall going into a teacher's classroom and sitting and taking copious notes on everything that I saw. And then I would meet with the teacher and go over all of those notes. And what was I getting better? Nothing, right? Because a teacher can improve 1,000 things at one time. We're here at MLK, we have a system for that. And we make sure that we give the teacher the highest leverage action step, one at a time, every week. So in essence, we're getting them better faster.
The goal of the weekly observations is to best help teachers move kids. So it's more than just let's make sure that your classroom is in order and like managed well, but we want to make sure that we're choosing action steps that are going to make a lesson go from good to great, or take a lesson that wasn't great and then help a teacher script a lesson that is.
That's going to be part of your action step today.
Our feedback conversations last anywhere between 35 minutes and 45 minutes. They start with just providing that praise to the teacher. Then we go directly into what we want the teacher to identify as their gap that was happening in the classroom. We provide the teacher with an exemplar model, whether that is the administrator or the senior team lead jumping up and being in full role play modeling, or showing an exemplar teacher teaching. And we ask the teacher to identify the gap between the exemplar and what was actually occurring in their classroom. And then from there, it kind of guides us into your action step for this week is, and we identify the what and the how. Then we ask the teacher, where can we incorporate this in your lesson plan for next week? The teacher opens up their laptop, we identify the area, and we give the teacher actually time during that feedback to adjust their lesson plan. Then we'll ask the teacher to jump up and get into full role play and practice. Sometimes that's uncomfortable for teachers to be in a full role play and practice, but teachers soon realize, practice with us so that you can practice perfect with the students. I believe the observations and feedback has made impact with growing and developing and keeping and retaining our effective and distinguished teachers.
So whenever you see
I think I would be failing my students if I didn't have feedback sessions, honestly. I had a lot of the elements as a first-year teacher that I was supposed to have, but it wasn't necessarily as extensive as it needed to be before coaching. I remember my first coaching session, I was like, wow, I'm doing all of this, but I'm not doing it to the full extent that I could be doing to support all of my students. And now I feel like I'm more aware of a lot of things that I could be improving on because of coaching.
All right, girl. Sweet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me know how it goes. Shoot me a text.
When teachers email you or text you and they're like, I did it. I feel much better about this lesson today. That small little change just made all the difference with the rest of my classes.
Her intentionality around.
We do have a LEAP evaluation system at Denver Public Schools, and that's the teacher's formal observation, and we don't want the formal observation to be a gotcha. And so prior to those formal observations, we're in their classroom, coaching them, giving them those action steps, and preparing them to have a much higher score on their evaluation. As an administrator, I want to be able to go to bed at night and know that I've done everything that I need to do to develop my teachers. I want to know that we've coached them and that we've provided them with unlimited opportunities to grow.
All right. So again, what we're kind of doing is we're taking our heads out of just the mentor role, but we're adding in this coaching role. What are we doing to help our teachers grow and become better teachers? And I think this information is not only useful for a teacher who's in their first or second year of teaching, this is useful for the teacher that's in their 50th year, the 15th year, 20th year of being in the classroom. And so for the next thing I wanted to share with you is this book. It is called The Art of Coaching. And if you have the slide, you can click on it right there. It's available on Amazon. It's about 15 bucks, but tons and tons of useful information about coaching teachers and helping them become better teachers. And so we're going to dive into a few things. I kind of do a broad stroke of some of the things that are in the book and practice some of the things that are in the book. So the first thing,
Christopher?
Yes.
I didn't want to be rude, but you know what would be a real nice gift for all your mentor teachers this, coming semester is that fabulous Art of Teaching coaching book.
Okay. I can certainly talk to Melissa about that. And I definitely had that on my brain already. So thank you for bringing that up. So for growth, so we're going to talk about growth through coaching. We just went through growth mindset and how does that apply to coaching? So number one, think to yourself, like, where does my client need to go? Now I need a preface in this book. She refers to her teachers as clients. And the idea is that she is being hired to help her teacher with a specific thing. Think about when you hire somebody, whether it be to clean your carpet, wash your car, install your internet, you are their client and they're helping you with a specific service. She thinks of herself as she is providing a specific service to her teacher, which is helping them get better in a specific area. So first thing she says, where does my client need to go? Secondly, who do I need to be? We are all different. We all think differently. We all learn differently. And so she really thinks through about what type of person do I need to be? What things do I need to be mindful of to help this teacher get better? So now we're going to kind of do some practice observation. And so one of the things she says in the book, and I have a lot of different little quotes in here from this book. And one of the things she says is, it is critical that a clear, narrow focus is agreed on before the observation. The coach needs to help the teacher identify a specific area of practice or focus for the observation. What exactly does the teacher want the coach to look at or look for? So instead of just going in and doing a generalized observation about how they're doing, the idea is you go in looking for a specific thing for that teacher. That teacher might say to themselves, I really feel like I've struggled with student engagement this year. And then you sit down with them and say, okay, well, here's some ideas. Here's some things we might want to try out. Then they try it out. And then you guys have a conversation afterwards. How did it go? What did you think went well? What could we try again? And then, so again, just kind of this idea of you're helping them get from point A to point B with their goal. And so now this is where that piece of paper comes in, or you can open up a Word doc, but we're going to look at Mrs. Jones. And Mrs. Jones is a brand new 9th grade English teacher. She is now in her second year of teaching. She wants to get better at creating a rigorous environment with high expectations and providing appropriate support for all students. So let me go to the next slide and see what you guys are going to do. So we're going to watch a short 5-minute snippet of Mrs. Jones teaching a lesson. And what I want you to do is I want you to write down what you see as far as her creating a rigorous environment. And I'll have these prompts for you when we watch the video, so you don't have to memorize them. But what you see as far as a rigorous environment, her having high expectations for her students, but also how is she providing support to those students? So again, you can type this on a Word doc if that's easier for you. Just kind of type down what you see, or if you just want to write it down on a piece of paper next to you. So any questions? So pretend all of us are casually walking into her classroom. We're going to watch her teach for about 5 minutes, and we're looking for those 3 things. Any questions before I start? No, because you guys are ready to write? Give me a thumbs up. All right, perfect. And just kind of go back and I don't want to go deep into the CSTPs, but a lot of ways that you can even start this process is just showing your teachers the CSTPs. Which one of these do you want to get better at? And then they can pick something and then you can go that way. So we're looking for these 3 things that are on the side here, and just write down what you see. So here is 5 minutes of Miss Jones teaching English.
Anna M, the word choice or how you direct the audience.
Okay, good. All right, C. I need someone else to do C. No, let's try to get someone else. Preferably somebody in the far back of the classroom. Yes, thank you, Shelby Buxton.
Detail and discuss what you learn about the roles of women. Explain how these roles could be solutions or casual conflicts.
Casual conflicts. So what am I asking you?
Like you can describe what the women do and also explain why that could be a problem or a solution.
All right, that's what I'm looking for. Exactly. D, I need somebody on this side. Yes, Eric. Awesome.
What you learn about the roles of women, explain how the...
No, Eric. We just did that one. You got to do D.
Explain how the Clinton structures the speech as one event, idea greater than the other. What does it say? If so, explain why or why not all of the idea points needed. Locate, transition, if any, what type of tone does their usage of personal pronouns create?
Walk and talk. Walk back to the desk and tell me, what do you think I'm asking you? If you need some assistance, let me know.
Yes, ma'am, I need some assistance.
Who can help out Eric? Tristan?
Can you repeat what the question?
I'll repeat it. I'll read it. Explain how she being Clinton, structures the speech. Is one event or idea greater than the other? If so, explain. Why or why not all of the ideas or points needed? Locate transitions, if any. What type of tone does her usage of personal pronouns create?
What you're asking is for us to point out main things in the speech and how they switch from one topic to another.
Sweetness, that's what I'm looking for. All right, we got a couple more alphabets. Do you want me to read them or do you think that you can just go on and get started? Go on and get started. All right, so we normally do about 20 to 25, 22 minutes. Will that suffice? All right, take a look at these questions. Talk to each other. I'm coming around to hear your feedback. Are you ready? You got a theme already?
No, right now we're still talking.
You're still talking?
Just talking about speech.
Okay, all right. You got your speech?
Got it.
So, when I say theme, what am I saying?
What's the main message?
The main message. The central idea. Now, if you need some help with that, open up your Elements of Literature text to page 430. We've been there, so let's go back to refresh our memories. Exactly, the colorful chart.
So like highlighted and then categorized.
That's what I'm talking about, Kaylee. So you're going to use these and be mindful. Look at the board. Isn't it the same wording as right here? All right, so what I'm trying to do is make sure you connect what we did yesterday to what we're going to do today. So you got to use all of these to come up with your theme. So if I come back, you have something for me? You will? I believe you, Katie. I believe you. I believe you. What have you come up with? Or with what have you come up?
It is informative and descriptive.
Yeah. So you think it's descriptive too? So it is twofold?
Yes.
Okay. So how do you know that it's informative?
She's informing people about how everything in this,
Like about the problem.
Well, what is the problem? What's the problem?
Women are treated unfairly.
How are they treated unfairly? Give me evidence. What is she saying? What is she pointing out?
Every Every woman deserves the chance to realize her own God-given potential, but we must recognize that women will never gain full dignity until their human rights are respected and protected.
I had that highlighted too. Okay. So how can it be descriptive?
She's describing.
She's describing the problems that women are facing.
Yes.
All right. What's the second part of this? How did you come to that conclusion? Adam, is that gum in your mouth? Find a trash can.
All right. So, so what we're gonna do now is you're gonna take your notes.
And the word.
Go to the next one. And I'm gonna have you guys just kind of post in here. Go back, Mentimeter. And we'll put this in chat. I'm gonna have you guys post what you found in each of these categories. And then let me go ahead and open that up. How did she do as far as creating a rigorous environment, high expectations, and support for all of her students? And again, there's a lot we could do. We could look at the room layout. We could look at whether or not she talked to every single student in the room. That we don't know. We can look at what was on the board, but right now, as a coach, you're just looking for these three things that she has asked you to look for. And how did she do? Awesome. And remember, this is a 9th grade English class. Fantastic. Does anybody want to share something, what their insights were? And you don't have to share in Padlet, but if you want to unmute, maybe talk about what you saw. Yeah, go ahead, Stacy.
I was just really impressed. I think it's what most teachers try to do, but we get so involved in our teaching that we forget. I just was impressed with her positivity and her approach to students. You know, that whole yet thing. Okay, well, what else? Just rather than saying, no, that's not right, encouraging. And I just liked her positive comments and her energy. That really stood out to me.
Fantastic. I agree. Thank you. Anybody else want to share? Yeah.
Hi, Chris. This is, I think as I took a look at that, I would agree with my colleague. However, what I believe she may have looked at again was, it appeared to me that when we look at her lesson that she may have taught yesterday, it did not transition to what she wanted the students to do today. So I would ask her how she might be able to go back again and do a guided practice with the students on one of those areas and go through it thoroughly so they understand what she's asking of them. It was apparent that they really did not understand what she had taught yesterday.
Good. Good observation. So before we move on, this is from what I saw, yes, she absolutely had a very rigorous environment. She had a lot in there, a lot on the board, a lot that they were needing to do. Really was like trying to get them to really think deep and critically about what it was they were reading. She had high expectations of them. If she called on them, she wanted them to be able to recite or give opinions on what it was that they were reading off the board. As Patrick pointed out, she was having them read in cursive and not just something that was digitally on their phones in front of them. But I would question whether or not she was providing enough support for all of the students. Were there students that were falling behind, and there was one student in there, you kind of see him, one gal is talking and the other one's looking behind him and he's like, I don't know what she's talking about. And so is she providing support for everyone? And so the other thing I really like about the idea of this was her lesson was recorded. Now, obviously this was a little bit more set up because they had multiple angles and stuff, but I like the idea of putting a camera in a teacher's room, having them just teach, but then having the teacher watch that video afterwards. And then you as the mentor who's giving their observation or really looking for what it is that they want to improve in, if you have a video, you can go back and see it again and kind of see it, see what's going on versus just sitting in the room and seeing it that one time and giving your best guess. And again, teachers I know aren't as comfortable being on video. They're a little more comfortable now than they were last year, but definitely encourage them. Like if you can plop up a camera just in the corner of their room, maybe even you walk away from it and just let them see that later on. So great jobs. And again, just something I really enjoyed and something for us to think about. So now we're gonna talk about we're gonna do a real quick brush stroke about giving feedback. The number one thing is you need to make sure you have their trust. First, they're not going to want to share anything with you or hear anything from you if they don't trust you. And that goes into knowing like what is their favorite Starbucks drink, what things do they like, who are their families, who are their pets, just having that open relationship with them. Secondly, asking permission, ask them, is it okay if I share with you some blunt things that I saw? Would it be okay if I gave you feedback on a certain area? In giving feedback in the observational thing. So I noticed you did blank. What would you do differently? In giving your feedback, you want to make sure you're not giving something that's a biased opinion. Hey, I noticed your kids were falling asleep. You're really giving them poor engagement strategies, or you're really not engaging your students. They're doing terrible. What would you do differently? Like you said, you want to ground it in some sort of non-biased data. Restrict the feedback to just 1 or 2 points. Don't give them a list of like 10 different things that they need to fix. Work on 2. I noticed you did this. What could you do differently? I know she did this as well. What could you do differently? And then lastly, number 5, almost lastly, is find the phrasing. So again, a lot of what she talks about in this book is thinking through your conversation before you have it. What elements do you want to speak on first? How will they be able to understand? If they're a visual person, would it be easier for you to draw out or write out on paper what you're talking about? And just really thinking through who that teacher is that you're trying to coach. And then the last one, invite reflection. And this is really the key highlighted point, which is not just giving them what they need to do, but really asking them, how did they think they did? How did they do? And really get them thinking about how they're doing in their education.
Hey, Christopher.
Yeah.
Do you want me to share? I mentor my mentors in my district, as we talked yesterday during our meeting and stuff. I actually have a document that we created of coaching stems and coaching moves that I share with all of my mentors. Do you want me to share it to the group?
Absolutely, I do. Okay. So if
all right, I'm gonna drop it in here. I'll drop the link.
Thank you, Christy.
You're welcome.
Christy and I had a great conversation yesterday about a lot of this stuff.
We did. So, and a lot of it you're going to see because for our student teachers, for our mentors working with student teachers, you'll see on the very bottom, it also refers to the TPEs that the student teachers need to do. Yeah. So I coach the mentors who work with the student teachers.
Love
so that's why that's also in there too, in case you have someone like that.
Mm-hmm.
So there it is. Use it, steal it, borrow it, change it, whatever you guys want to do with it. But when I find I'm going to go coach with somebody, I kind of have a couple of these already in my back pocket because I've seen the videos of them and where I want them to go. So I already have it kind of like written down or highlighted what I want to ask them.
Fantastic. And I love it. And so this goes back to really thinking through what you're going to say and how you're going to approach these conversations before you do them. A lot of us tend to just have conversations off the cuff. I love what Christy's put together here. And there's so much more that I want you to be able to share for us. And they have a really great process about coaching teachers in their district at Orange USD. So It's good stuff. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
You're very welcome. As soon as I saw it, I'm like, oh my God, I got something. I need to give it.
Yeah. Love it. So yeah, and then I'll put that in our resources as well. So very cool. So the other thing so the next thing she talks about in this book is coaching approaches. There are several different ones in here that she goes through. I'm just going to highlight a few of them right now. And the first one I want to highlight with you is a catalytic approach. And this approach is useful to help a person reflect. A coach is kind of having them do some self-discovery, some problem solving. And some of the questions that you might ask in this approach is, tell me about a time when you worked with a challenging person. How did you deal with that? And just really let them start thinking about, oh, what did I deal with? Maybe it might be a student that was challenging. How did they deal with it? Another one, I hear you're struggling with organizing your classroom. How do you intend to start? And instead of just giving them the answers, asking questions instead. It's like, oh, that sounds like a great project. That sounds like a great thing you want to do. How do you think you should start with that? And then just really get them talking about it. And all you're doing is you're basically just being the mirror, getting them to really think through how they want to improve things. Awesome. Next one's confrontational approach. This one's obviously a little more confrontational. And she says a lot of times we tend to think of it as a negative thing. It's more of an interrupting thing. And so when you're thinking about somebody who has that fixed mindset, like if they say, I'm just not good at technology, I'm never going to get good at it. You, as the confrontational approach, is where you might interrupt them and say, well, you may not be good at it now, but you might be good at it soon. Just really getting them to think about that. And so she has these things called rut stories and river stories. And a rut story is basically where the person has kind of a self-pity story about this, like, yeah, the worst things always happen to me, and this happened, and then it was the worst possible thing, and I try to go to Starbucks, but my car had a flat tire, and then they ran out of the flavor of drink that I want, and just kind of interrupting that thought process. A river story is thinking more helpful about it, is what she says. So again, kind of shifting some of those growth mindset things in the confrontational, or not shifting growth mindset, but shifting the fixed mindset and interrupting and being a little more confrontational about some of the way they're thinking. And the last one, and I'm sorry I'm rushing through these because we have the admins coming back pretty soon here, is a shifting their mental model. Mental models, I think we've all heard of them by now, is basically the way you think or the way you view certain things. How do you view your students? And so I'll share a really quick story about a mental model bias that I had, I'm not proud of. My first year of teaching, I had a student come in. And again, I was first year teaching, didn't know a whole lot about IEPs or any of that. Just brand new student comes in, kind of talked really slow. And then when I asked him to do something, I was teaching web design. When I asked him to do something, he was just really seemed kind of standoffish, kind of took his time getting to it. If I asked him a question, he'd be like, yeah, Mr. McClung, that's, I think this, and just was really, so I just assumed, and this kid, often wore black. He'd wear like a black t-shirt, black jeans, Vans or whatnot. And I just assumed like, this kid is just some thug kid, doesn't want to be in here, doesn't want to be in my class. And I just kind of wrote him off. Came to find out a couple of weeks later, I got an IEP for him. And this student had a brain injury when he was young, like 5 or 10 years old. He had fallen out of a crib or whatnot, hit his head, and had a brain injury. And therefore his processing was a lot slower. So my bias, just looking at him and being a new teacher, was like, this kid's not interested. I don't want to hear anything about it. I don't want to take the time to learn him. Found that out about him, totally changed my perspective, slapped my hand for thinking the worst of him. And then I knew how to help that student. And so then I needed to give him time to answer a question. I needed to give him time to work on projects. And that student really became one of my most successful students. And it was all by shifting my mental model of what this student was. And so that's kind of what we want to do with our teachers, is really get them to shift that ideology. All right, so the last Menti thing I'm going to have you guys do, and you hopefully are still on that Mentimeter. I haven't Tons of windows open. There we go. All right. How can you utilize a growth coaching approach at your site? Think about your teachers. Think about the teachers you're working with. What are some ideas of how you would utilize some of this? Or things that you're already using? Awesome. Meeting the teacher where they are, growing from there. Very good. Very cool. Very cool. Love that, Patrick. And you can use chat as well. Patrick put his in chat. I have 3 new ideas I'd like you to try. Pick one. Exactly. Having them choose what they want to engage in after you kind of get to know them. Like the question that stems to help guide teachers reflect on their practice. Absolutely. And again, some of this content is, instead of looking at the content that your teacher, like you guys are both looking at the content, maybe your teacher's looking at the content and your mindset is mostly looking at them, fixed on how they're doing, not just how the lesson's going. How are they doing with the lesson and creating the lesson? Content focus on teacher needs and ask questions, increase their thinking, focus on what they feel. Absolutely. Reframing the conversation to more process oriented rather than outcome. Love that. That goes back to what we learned in the video. Instead of looking at the outcome of what they're learning, looking at the process of how they're learning it or how they're building. Very cool. Thank you. So last thing, and then Kathy, you can go ahead and start bringing our admins back in. These are some more resources if you wanted to get further, deeper into this whole coaching world. Elena Aguilar not only has the Art of Coaching book, she has Coaching for Equity. I think she just came out with it. I've not read it yet. I just bought it, have yet to dive into it. Cognitive coaching we've heard of for years. This is another great program or a great ideology about this thing about coaching teachers, and then also the growth mindset for coaches. Now, this is more student-centered, but still just some great information. And the video that I showed you, as far as that teacher teaching, if you wanted to do more practice like that, if you click here, it will take you to, and like I said, unfortunately, there's not anything for CTE here, but if you just wanted to see just some teachers teaching, they have a ton of videos that you can really just practice looking at what teachers are doing and getting used to just really looking for certain things in their class, the engagement, whatnot. They have some science stuff that's really engaging. Here's a social studies class for 10th graders that's about 30 minutes long. And it's just watching teachers teach. And it's just really neat for you guys to train your eyes and looking at that. So welcome back, Grant. Yay. Hope you guys had a good time. I mailed churros to all of my participants.
What?
Yeah, we've been watching like Star Wars. It's just been great.
So we had an amazing time as well. And mentors out there in the audience, I'm just going to say that you have some bang up rock star administrators. Some of the things that we got to chat about and collab about were really cool, especially under that, auspice of a growth mindset. So we had a great time.
Yeah.
I don't know if I sent churros out there. I probably should have done that. I apologize.
All right. So it looks like we have still a few more people in room 2 or in room 1. So Kathy, did you close the room? Or maybe let me close that window so I don't get up all in your business and let you do your thing. All right. So everybody should be back. So that was our coaching stuff. Again, we will have this recorded if you want to go back to it. If you have any questions about it, please feel free to email me. And then Christy as well. They have a fantastic coaching program at Orange Unified. And then we will do some more conversations about this. So now we wanted to transition into just an update as far as CTE Teach goes, where we're at as far as hours and all that stuff goes. And Grant, I'm gonna turn it over to you.
All right, I'm gonna share my screen then. And Chris, I did share your sentiments around that statement for next year. Hopefully it's non-existent, but we're still implementing it for the moment, but I'll show this to get into our slides. So much has happened so far in this year. And you know that if you've been a part of CTE Teach in the past, that we're expanding, we're growing, we're trying to shift this quality program to more LEAs and give more people access. That's the big thing. And one of the things that we're doing with that is capturing data in a little bit of a different way, sharing it similar to how we've done in the past. But the numbers that you see on your screen right now are for the first trimester reporting period. Mind you, mentors, you all know that you have 150 hours that you get to use from us in terms of the mentor stipend over the term of the grant, which is truncated, right? We're in trimester 2 right now, but what we see here is that a total of 846 hours have been utilized between the 45 mentors that we have, I believe. Mm-hmm. And so we're doing pretty good. Now, Chris and David and Kathy kind of know this. I'm a little bit of a competitive person. And so as I put this together, thinking about Northern California versus Southern California, I see some similarities and some differences. And, you know, I'm like, what's going on with PD facilitation? The North isn't up to par with the South. And we're not going to do a civil war here over it, but I'm just saying.
Civil war. I choose Iron Man.
Okay, got it. And so we've got some things that we're noticing. We've seen some cool stuff in your activity logs, but attending the PD is good. Observations, I'm going to give a little shout out to my Northern California mentors. Y'all are rocking it. Thank you for going and observing your teachers. And I envy Southern California for the amount of professional development that you're putting on with your mentees and your other teachers. That's kind of cool. But keep those coming. Make sure that you've got things labeled appropriately. We'll show you a little bit more here in a moment, but ours are doing good. We're proud of the work that y'all are doing and happy that we can kind of be along for the ride. So site visits. I know Chris and I could go on forever about the things that we've learned between these site visits, and I'm not going to lie, I've stolen some of the things that y'all have done for what we're doing in our program just because they're such great things. And I've only had the opportunity to do 4 visits right now, but I'll tell you, each of those 4 CTE programs at those LEAs are in vastly different spots. Some are just kind of starting to get organized and getting things going. Some of them have been rock and rolling for the last 15 years, and they're just, you know, excelling and seeing growth. But yeah, kudos to each one of those. Without specifics, we'll talk about here in a second. Chris, what's going on in the Southern California region?
Same thing. I've loved all the site visits that I've done, have made some great connections, and then have gotten some great information from you guys and what you're doing. I'm jealous because most of them I've done have been right next to the beach. And I'm like, gosh, it's so hot where I'm at, or going to be hot where I'm at. And so it's been really neat to just kind of meet everybody as what you're doing. And then I met some teachers on these site visits, which have led to us recording a podcast next week that you will hear more about.
Yeah, that's cool. So keep coming with those site visits. Remember, it's not an audit. It's just an informal opportunity for us to sit down with y'all, touch base, see what's going on and how things are being implemented, and understand the context just a little bit better. But we do want to give some shout outs. In diving through some of the data, want to call out Camilla, Robbie, and Tanya specifically for some of the things that they put in their mentor activity logs. And Camilla, I know she's on with us. I want to give you a pat on the back for that article that you shared, because grades and how they're utilized and leveraged, especially now, administrators, if we call back to the learning loss and classroom management, what's going on in our context these days, that's really kind of cool. So thank you for putting that in your activity log for us to integrate into our programming. Robbie, I don't think Robbie's with us, I gotta be sure, but I don't think so. Love the integration of CTSOs and how we're building those up in our school districts. For anybody who's been involved with them, we know that they're crucial for connecting everything for student success. And then Tanya, those observations, they kill me in that I love hearing that, seeing those things, and that those conversations are happening. So all of these shout outs to say, you don't have to be super detailed with every entry, but know that we comb through every piece so we can integrate what you're saying, what you're doing with our professional development and how we evolve the program in the future. So thank you.
Great. Awesome.
And then I guess looking at trimester 2, some things that are coming up to be cognizant of. Mentors, you're already aware at this point that you have the primary load and obligation of reporting on your shoulders for the activity logs, the observations, and any other evidence for the work that you're doing. Keep that in mind. It shouldn't be above and beyond what you're probably already doing in initiatives in your school district anyways. It's just a matter of we've got to see some of it and have access to that. And then mentors, as we went through some of the sustainability report, that's your big touch for reporting. So make sure you know that those sustainability reports are due to us by April 30th, and you can enlist the help of anybody that you need to get those done, especially Chris or myself, as you start to dive into those. And then the trimester 3 windows coming up will be April 1 to June 30. Note that as we get towards the end of May, we're going to start harping on any laggards out there for any deficient reporting that might be there, because we have to turn around a quick report to the State Department of Education once we hit that point. We want to make sure your perspective is included and we're accurately representing the work that we're doing with you this year. So I think that's all I've got, right? Chris, this is you.
Yeah. So just want to remind you guys, just some wrap up stuff. We do have all of our media if you've not subscribed to any of it. If you're looking for resources, especially our YouTube channel has a ton of stuff up there that we do. This webinar, once we're done with it, will be up there as well, that if you want to share it with other people. And then anything, and like I said, we do the podcast, that's all available. If you're looking for something to listen to in your car, that is there as well. And then lastly, I want to give you a reminder, just inform you about some of the webinars we have coming up over the next couple months. If you guys remember, Elena Hernandez and I have this pirate thing we continually keep trying to get away from, but people keep pulling it back on us. So we've been asked by San Bernardino County Schools to do a pirate training next week. And so we're doing one called Running a Tight Shipwreck. And it's all about accessibility and equity in a virtual environment. And so we will be doing that next week. And then also Mrs. McClung will do a webinar about how to make a Bitmoji classroom. Some of you might think, well, I've seen those, maybe you're interested in making one, or if you don't know what it is, she's doing a great in-depth job and has tons of resources about how you can make a Bitmoji classroom for your students and how that can be incorporated into the lessons. And then the two that are asterisks here, these are the ones, and so these two, I'm sorry, are optional. You don't have to come to them. You're welcome to come to them. We're inviting you, but these two ones we do need you to come to. And so we're going to do another webinar in May, and this is going to be about teaching CTE in a hybrid environment. So we have some models we want to share with you, and we kind of have the looking at the transition back into a hybrid classroom, that we have put some content together for that. And then lastly, we'll have our advisory webinar on May 19th. And so we have this site that we've shared with you before. It's the bit.ly CTE Teach Ed. If you click on it, it takes you to this page, which hopefully you guys are familiar with by now. And if you click on upcoming events, all of that is here. This one I will take down today, but if you want to sign up for the pirate one we're doing next week, you can click there. And then shortly I will have links here for you guys to register for those other things as well. So the last thing I'm going to put in here, and I might need to close, is we would like to have you guys fill out a survey of this webinar. And just kind of give us some feedback. How do you think it went? What did we touch on that we could have improved upon? What things did you enjoy? And just really this helps us to, as far as creating these webinars, really be able to shift things around or modify them or improve on them, just so that we can continue to give you everything that we want to, so that it suits your needs. So, yeah, we're good. All right. So Grant, close us out.
All right. So we always end with a quote, and I will say, actually, before we get into that, I think I did put the link for the survey in the chat. So as we're wrapping things up, if you would click on that, make sure that you fill that out for us. We can get some information. It's all key, but as we have up here, one of my mentors, actually, Oprah Winfrey, she's actually a birthday buddy. Her and I share the same birthday. I love that. Just throw that out for you. But she says a mentor is someone who allows you to see the hope inside yourself. A mentor is someone who allows you to know that no matter how dark the night, in the morning, joy will come. A mentor is someone who allows you to see the higher part of yourself when sometimes it becomes hidden to your own view. So think about how you as a mentor or even an administrator mentor others. And she's a great person anyways. And the words are good to live by. So that's what we got.
All right. So any questions you have, feel free to contact either of us. We're glad you guys are all here. So thank you for coming.
Thanks for coming, everybody.